Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Welcome to Good Morning Outdoors, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the outdoor hospitality industry. From campgrounds and RV parks to glamping, outdoor resorts, adventure travel, and ecotourism, we'll be discussing all things outdoor travel and hospitality, so join us on Good Morning Outdoors every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning. A good
Morning.
Rainy morning indeed here in upstate New York. I feel like it's been like raining these past few days. I was out kind of walking around Lake George this morning having coffee and was like, man, I miss camping season. I don't know about you. I know we're like ready to head down to your property here in the Catskills in a couple weeks and start kind of preparing for the season. And I don't know, man, this rain, the snow, like we do an outdoor podcast and it's been so tough to like get outdoors and do stuff. I'm kind of ready to get back outside. I don't know about you, Matt.
Big time. At least all the snow's melting. That's
Yeah.
that's the it's gross out, but all the
I was gonna say, I guess
down.
I'll take rain in the sense that like it's spring showers, baby. It's like right around the corner. As soon as the rain comes, I know that like, all right, camping season's it's starting to get here and we're coming and yeah, it's I'm ready for it. I'm really ready for it.
Totally on the same page. And in big news, they invited us back for a second week here, so
Yeah.
that's a win.
I was gonna say I don't know about you as well, but I've got a lot of great feedback from folks last week who tuned into episode 1 who really enjoyed this. I think we've got a great opportunity here to build this community out and really add a nice bit of outdoor news and community here to GMH. So yeah, we didn't fumble the bag too much. I hope we'll continue the momentum here into week 2.
Yes. Yeah, and we got a lot to cover today, so I think today's going to be a fun one. Lots of fun news, big industry stuff to cover, hopefully some educational stuff. So
I was going to say, speaking on kind of the educational side, we talked last week about kind of defining some terms for folks on what we wanted to talk about and cover. Obviously, you and I both come from, kind of the campground and RV park background more than anything. But we wanted to talk about adventure travel as well, in addition to sort of ecotourism here in the coming weeks. I think for a lot of folks, I honestly did this as we were kind of researching and trying to figure out what adventure travel was. You hear those two terms, adventure and travel, together, and you probably get a picture in your head of what that means. It's less sedentary than like getting on a plane and lounging by the beach all day. Like, obviously that's not really adventure travel. And a good definition I think that we found was it's a type of tourism or travel that involves remote or exotic locations in order to take part in physically challenging outdoor activities. And I think, we look at like top destinations, places like World Wonders, like UNESCO World Heritage Sites, obviously state and local parks. These are things for a lot of people that like, I think of bucket list items a lot of times. I don't know about you and maybe like what destinations come to mind when you think of that, but I think that's kind of at the highest sense. People probably think of like, what's that place and do that crazy, exciting, awesome thing that like I want to do before I die. Like that is like the peak of adventure travel.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of folks.
Yeah, a couple big takeaways for me, having studied the space a little bit, and I highly recommend checking out the Adventure Travel Trade Association.
Yeah, really great organization.
AdventureTravel.biz. They've got a lot of really good free resources and reports and data. So I soaked a bunch of that in, and it's not always about adventure, right? A lot of it is cultural and culinary, and a trending kind of topic in that space is soft adventure, which is I think probably more my speed.
Yeah, me too.
I love to go hiking. I try to stay active on vacation. Hiking is usually a big part of it, and that's for many destinations. According to the trade association, there, hiking is one of the big
right.
activities.
I think you think about like the outdoor rec economy. We covered it last week in our story with Outdoor Alliance and in Doge a little bit. With any of those activities, as you said, hiking, mountain biking, trekking, like snorkeling, scuba diving, anything that kind of gets you up and moving. It doesn't have to be like I'm jumping out of an airplane going someplace. I'd never do that anyways. But as you said, there's a lot of kind of that outdoor rec economy activities. I think that counts as adventure travel in a lot of ways. And we see a lot of those activities being combined on the lodging side as well. People go camping just to go hiking or just to go fly fishing or trekking in some place. Like there's a large correlation in my mind between the type of travel folks do and the activities and the things that relate to it.
100%. No, it really wrap up here with a quick takeaway too that was interesting for me was that, and it makes sense. I think around the world as Americans, we're known as consumers, and America is the biggest both destination for adventure travel, which makes it, we have so many beautiful state and national parks. I think people get bored of the United States and want to go abroad, but we have some spectacular national parks and some really beautiful, unique, different.
There's a lot of places close to home, even the Catskills here in New York. Like Outside Magazine rated that as one of the top locations. Obviously,
right.
There's got a campground there, and places like the Everglades, the Rocky Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, as we mentioned, all of the state and national parks that you find across the country. Those all are great outdoor destinations. And as you said, places a little bit closer to home and a little bit more enjoyable on the travel front.
Yeah.
And kind of speaking of, I was going to say, go ahead. Do you have anything to kind of wrap up before we move on?
No, I was going to jump into ecotourism.
Go for it.
So yeah, sort of closely related when you study kind of the top minds and the top kind of discourse, pretty closely related, which was interesting to me. So there's a woman, Martha Honey, who wrote kind of the book on ecotourism and sustainable and responsible development. Covers a lot of resort concepts. Highly recommend that book for anybody who's interested. She has established really like 7 principles for ecotourism. And so it starts with traveling to natural destinations. I don't want to misspeak here, so I'm going to pull it up on my screen. 1 is travel to natural destinations. 2 is minimize your impact on, the ecology and the ecosystem. 3 is to build environmental awareness. 4 is to provide direct financial benefits for conservation. 5 is to provide financial benefits and power for local people. 6 is to respect the local culture. And 7 is to support human rights and democratic movements. So I think this is a really noble thing. It's kind of traveling with a purpose and a mission.
Right. And you hear kind of phrases like leave no trace. We've kind of heard a lot of that. If you remember back to like the old Smokey the Bear commercials and people talking about that, kind of instilling that. I don't know if, people's parents did that when you were taking your first hike or going on that first camping trip. I think, those kind of principles. And as you said, the way in which you think about that, look, this whole, the way in which you travel, this outdoor travel thing, it's bigger than you. You're not going to be the last person to come through a destination. You're not the only person impacted by the travel and the work that you do. As you said, it's kind of getting you to think about travel in a larger sense than yourself, rather than just always trying to be about, I'm doing this trip for me, or I'm going on this trip because I need it. It's, well, what about the other folks in that community and who am I touching kind of along the way?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really, I think as an outsider, years ago when I first heard this term, I kind of was like, oh, that's like, virtue signaling, or like, it's not real. It's Leonardo DiCaprio shouting about, global warming from his mega yacht kind of thing. But no, you dig in and it's real. It's a good cause. It benefits people. It's very people centric,
right?
Rather than, it's very ecology and environmentally centric as well. But right alongside there, it's about people and improving the earth because people inhabited it. And I think it's great.
And kind of speaking on sort of on the ecotourism and adventure travel piece, we've got a little bit of an update from a story we covered last week. Speaking of kind of being a part of the community and making people aware of what you're doing, Matt, you kind of want to give an update on Fire Festival 2. We talked about this last week in a really crazy story, and we've already got an update, and let's just say a not so great one at that.
Yeah, and literally hours after our broadcast last week, the story came out from The Guardian, and then The Hollywood Reporter picked it up, and we saw that circulated on social. Shout out Trent Hughes, saw your tweet there, which put me on the trail of this story after we initially reported on it. So the Island Tourism Board, the Isla Mujeres tourism board there, has come out and said they know nothing about alleged Firefest 2.0. Permits have also reportedly not been requested for this event. But of course, Billy McFarland came out and defended their position. He said,
was saying right that they've been in contact all along, and that it's just, this is baffling to me how this is starting again. And you'd think, just with all of the scrutiny that this event got the first time, that this would have been the first thing that they did before even announcing this, was get the locals and the people on their side a little bit, and that people actually wanted to feel a part of it. Right. There was, the first time there was that whole fiasco with the workers and the contractors and the people not getting paid, and obviously the humanitarian crisis and the money laundering and all of that. But it just baffles me. As I said last week, I was not giving good vibes last week when we talked about this. The vibes are even lower in my mind as to whether or not I would go and do this thing.
Part of me thinks it could be by design. That it's a like a leaked, right? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Publicity stunt. Wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, if nothing else, Billy has proven, even the first time, he's a marketer for sure. He can attract attention and draw people in, whether that's for better or for worse. He knows what he's doing in that regard. So yeah, super interesting to see kind of what happens with that. I don't think either one of us were expecting an update like this so quickly, but man, what a disaster to have that press news come out in the last couple of weeks. And I know kind of as we sort of dive into more of the heavy hitting news today, we're going to talk about some really big players today, and kind of let people see into one of the largest portfolio operators and then two of the largest REITs in the space. So Matt, I don't know if you want to kind of tee up our first story here about potential portfolio going up for sale, and one that I actually know quite well because I'm a former employee here.
Yeah, this one caught my eye. It's an interesting story. It's Spacious Skies Campgrounds. They are a group that came into existence few years ago.
March of 2021 was the founding. Purchased the first park in May of 21 up in Maine. That was the first location.
And they bought 15 campgrounds in 2 years, which is an incredible feat. I mean, it's
at the time it was one of the fastest clips that we'd ever seen from sort of a public launch, and especially in the sense that they were doing it with a brand in in-house management. This was not as though they were outsourcing these operations or these other things to a third-party provider, like a lot of times we've seen today, where people can buy a lot of parks quickly, but they're not doing all of the work. They're not running them. They're not trying to really, as I said, grow a brand into anything. And I think that is very much still one of Spacious Sky's biggest calling cards, is they've got an incredible brand and story. They do all of the management and the operations in-house, which again, at the time that they started, that was a little bit unheard of, especially there were only kind of a few in the space branded that did that. We knew of kind of the KOAs and the Jellystones of the world who did a lot of that through their franchisees. But this was something that, we hadn't really seen before. The founders, Eric and Ali, both had nice backgrounds that would fit in with this from a real estate and kind of a creative marketing background. So really one of the best stories in the industry that we've seen thus far.
Yeah, well said. And if you want to dive deeper, into that story, I did write I think probably close to 500 words, posted it both on LinkedIn and Twitter. Covers their story. It's super interesting. They didn't really set out to build a big brand initially. I think Eric had a background in commercial real estate, self-storage, right?
Right.
And they viewed it as investors. Their initial plan was to buy a few campgrounds and to hire a third-party management company. And they quickly discovered that was, that was not
what they
them.
ultimately wanted to do. Right.
Yeah. Had some challenges with the third-party management there. Couldn't get, the service or the
sort of the staff on site to relinquish control of the property. Right.
Quickly pivoted. I think, saw an opportunity, had the foresight to pivot and really double down, and then just went on an absolute tear of acquiring campgrounds. You said it. It's an incredible brand. I'm amazed by it because, I'm a part owner of 3 campgrounds, worked on those acquisitions, and my head is still spinning.
It's hard. It's hard.
And that was over 3 years. For me, it's like, wow, buying 1 campground a year feels hard.
Right.
To do 15 in 2 years it's amazing. So, and I think this, it's interesting kind of the way this came out and was approached. I'm not, they're smarter than me. That, I'm not pretending to, say or think that I have a better idea of how to do what they're doing. Just think it's a really interesting kind of turn of events. It was listed with a real estate broker. It was put on Crexy. It's a pretty public way to go about it. A lot of times you see confidential campground or RV park portfolio, and you have to go and sign an NDA and a confidentiality agreement.
Have a relationship with the broker. There's really a large vetting process before sort of, as you said, the details of the portfolio will be revealed in a lot of ways.
So honestly, this just hasn't happened before in the industry. There isn't a publicly disclosed price. We have kind of heard through the grapevine that there is a pricing expectation there. I won't disclose it because I respect their process and all that. But it's a chunk of change. It's quite a portfolio that they've built, and there is some private equity involved through a firm called Sculptor Capital Management, which is a massive $34 billion assets under management, investment management firm. And that always plays a factor, right? Commercial real estate, private equity, and professional investment has a very defined kind of approach and set of guardrails. It's usually highly time oriented. I've always personally believed that that's not a really good fit for the campground space. You're buying these old campgrounds that at some point in your ownership, you're probably gonna have to rebuild all the infrastructure. There's a gold rush happening right now. I personally think it's over, at least at the top end of the market. Very opinionated on that matter. I see people posting things that are raising money from private individuals that I just don't agree with. I think it's
right. And I would add too, you just don't know what the market timing is going to be like either. If you are going to, for anybody, whether it's Spacious Skies or anybody looking to potentially sell a property, you may want to or need to due to capital needs, but is that really the right timing? Is that really right for the property? Is that really something that you want to be forced to engage in at that time? And I think that's where a lot of people just, as you said, the fit just a lot of times isn't there in that respect, that it forces you into positions that you might not take unless you were forced to kind of step in and do that.
Right.
And I think that that might be the situation we're looking at here. As you said, we've kind of heard different stories, and this is really as kind of I look at it, it kind of fits with what I know of Spacious Skies as somebody who worked there, in the sense that, you know, they're using their great brand and great story to, I think, go public with this in a way that accomplishes a really big goal and allows them to kind of reach that goal for the property. I mean, it's, you know, over 1,800 sites, 15 great locations across the eastern United States, from Maine down to Savannah. We only kind of see of a few other groups who have purchased properties in large numbers in that area of the country. We see others kind of in the Southeast or in the West or in the Midwest, but to have that really nice, clean grouping of 15 in a geographic area like that, you know, there just isn't anything else like it that really exists on the market today. And to your point, it's just kind of it's a really unique portfolio and asset to come onto the scenes, and that there's really has now been public discussion around for the last week. And yeah, really kind of interesting to see how they use the brand and how they really come out of this situation and move forward. Because I think, again, they've got one of the best brands, best portfolios in the space. It's a really great asset for somebody to own or be a part of. And yeah, going to be really interesting to see what happens next year.
Fascinating. I can't wait to see what happens.
And speaking of a couple of other big players in the space, let's kind of shift gears here and talk about the two largest REITs in the space. Of course, for those who are familiar, we're talking about Sun Communities and Equity Lifestyle Properties. These are, you know, as I mentioned, two of the largest holders of not only RV, but mobile home and marina assets. We touched on one of these players, Sun Communities, last week in our story with the Safe Harbor Marina sale. They recently, both of them, released their Q4 results along with annual reporting through the 10Ks. Matt, I don't know if we want to sort of start with Sun Communities and talk about really what the market's showing. And as you said, kind of have a discussion here on the gold rush or the golden age of campgrounds, and whether or not that's really a thing based on the market activity and what's happening with two of the largest here in this space.
Yeah. So Sun Communities is the second largest at 166 RV resorts, about 57,000 RV sites. Analyzing their annual reports is super interesting. I think it gives you the best glimpse into what the industry is, what works in the industry, you know, the macro on the consumer side.
Right. They've really got their finger on the pulse in the best way possible.
And then also on the supply side, which to me is it's fascinating.
Right.
It's relatively small sector within hospitality. You know, I think we said last week that it's, you know, there's like 1.4 million RV sites,
right?
5 million hotel rooms. So it's, you know, 20-ish% of the hospitality, you know, supply. But so they, you know, their business model is to acquire large, super well located RV resorts, basically have 200 sites or more. And they've stopped buying. They've just quite frankly stopped buying. Sun Communities, you know, I think they didn't buy anything in 2024. They didn't buy anything, and they haven't bought anything significant since 2021. I think they bought one.
Right, I was going to say we've really just seen a lot of like shifting, either taking kind of these non-core assets, if you will, and selling them, or as you said, it's like they've gone in with the approach of trying to update or upgrade and improve the current inventory that they have.
They've pretty much entirely exited the Canadian market.
Right.
They had 15 or 16 RV resorts in Canada. I think they have 2 left. They sold, I believe, 13 of them, which is interesting. I mean, it's a different market in Canada. It's seasonal. It's much lower revenue. We operate in upstate New York and New England, and it very much mirrors that market of, you know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a season revenue,
which I think you can understand why they wouldn't want that as much, or moving to other areas, in the sense that, like, why with them especially, we talk about the advantage for you as, a single operator who owns these locations. It's kind of nice to have an off season sometimes. But for them, they're already operating the rest of their operations year round. It's not as though them as a REIT just magically decide to turn things off. So it's like, why sacrifice year round cash flow, especially with these properties that they're operating them as long-term stable assets with long-term tenants in place in a lot of cases.
Right.
Like, they'd much rather have that than a seasonal operation, as you said, that's more of a holiday park. If you look at kind of a UK term, kind of like it is in Canada, like it is in the UK, like it is in upstate markets. As you said, it's kind of why put yourself in that position when there are other opportunities that provide that year-round stability.
Right. 100%. I mean, the seasonal business is a high floor, low ceiling type of investment. It's much more predictable. Some investors love the high potential revenue of transient, but that's the volatile side of the business. Gas prices go crazy. People travel less. Your occupancy is lower. There's a million reasons there's volatility there. Michael Golden had a interesting question here. He said, is the slowdown of acquisitions by the big boys a red flag that the market is too high, played out? I am 100% yes, a believer of this.
This is the number one question I think we talk about all the time.
Yes. And it's not, there's still tremendous opportunity in the RV business, but it's not competing with ELS, equity lifestyle properties, and you kind
of heard, as you said in the beginning, what is their floor? They're shooting for that 200 sites or lower. That is not the bulk of the inventory that is for sale, or even within the RV side of the business to begin with.
Yes. So every year,
said, there are opportunities to kind of find those things that you just know an ELS or a Sun is not going to go for that type of property, and that's where the opportunity lies.
Right.
Stuff with expansion potential, stuff that's still in great markets, but that's a little bit smaller than what these big players want. That's where there's still some meat on the bone.
Right. And so at the beginning of ELS's annual report, they do a nice kind of summary of like who they are and what the industry is and what the opportunity is. And I love reviewing that every year because it reminds me of this. They count and estimate that there's 1,300 RV resorts of 200 sites or more in the country, which a lot of these, syndicators or whatever.
People don't want to hear this, but it's real. So as you said, there's so many people. Even as you said, look at the next rung lower than the Sun and the ELS. As you said, it's other syndicators, it's other people trying to build multi-unit portfolios. There's so many people and dollars chasing this finite amount of inventory that it's crazy. It puts such a squeeze on that. And in a lot of ways, it just drives the price. It's simple supply and demand. When you look at
100%.
So much demand for these things, so little supply in the market at any one time, that these properties become so difficult to buy in a lot of ways.
So, and here's kind of how I view it. And let's move on to ELS a little bit in a second here. But so that 1,300 number, 1,300 RV parks of 200 sites or more, the top two own 400 of those. There's a whole mess of probably a dozen players that own a few dozen each. I just did a quick exercise this morning. It's like 1,000 parks that are owned between these kind of, private equity backed or syndicator or, people that are scaling portfolios. And so 1,000, that we're like approaching maybe 70% consolidated already in that institutional market. Granted, not all of those are 200 sites or more. They might be 100 or 150. Even if it's 50% of those 1,000 parks or 200 sites or more, we're talking 35, 40% consolidated. Not what people tell you, which is, it's 5% consolidated. It's less than 10% consolidated. That's because so many of these 20, 30, 40, 50 site campgrounds in the eyes of 99% of investors are untransactable. They're just not even worth the time of day.
Right.
And so Michael had a quick follow-up here. He said, is it because the outdoor hotel and glamping industry is eating into market share? Yes and no. I mean, I would say that's where the explosive growth is today. And you look at, there's really no like definitive source of data. Sage Outdoor Advisory is the leader, undisputed leader, but they're kind of launching their data services.
And it's just hard on the glamping side. There's not a lot of these large people that you can like consolidate and pull the data together to get a good read on that. And I think that's the challenge is like, as you just discussed, you look at the consolidation and a lot of these people that you can go to and they'll give numbers and reporting on what's happening on the traditional side of the industry that kind of has yet to catch up on the glamping side. We hear and see the growth a lot of times. And as you said, it's what everybody wants to kind of add to their property, or if people are looking, you kind of look at that as kind of that in a lot of ways is kind of the next frontier. If there is a gold rush ish to happen, it's there probably more than anything else. But as you said, it's so hard to get a read on what's actually happening with real data behind it.
Right.
So much of it's just anecdotal
niche.
Talking to operators.
Yeah. It's so tiny. It's somewhere around, I don't know, 350 professional glamping locations.
Right.
Somewhere around 7,000-ish units estimated.
Right. You look at a lot of folks have like the bell tent in the backyard kind of thing. And like, as you said, having professional brands and like running it like you would a short-term rental, a hotel business, a campground business. There just aren't that many folks that do that.
Definitely. Well said. And so I think just, a couple important notes here on sort of the business model and how Sun Communities and ELS are shaping their business. They're kind of doing the same thing, but in different strategies. They're getting away from transient business. Sun Communities is doing it by converting transient sites to seasonal or annual rentals. And they're doing it at a pretty incredible clip. I mean, right now, they're like approaching 60% seasonal and annual sites. They converted 2,300 sites in 2024, which is like 5% of their total sites. And they tell you right in their reports and presentations that they view 40 to 50% of their remaining transient sites as fit and great candidates to be converted to seasonal or annual. So that would put it at, I don't know, somewhere around like 80% seasonal or annual. So they're getting away from the volatility of the transient business. It's a safer play to rent long-term.
That's where I was going to go. Is you hear, I've got a quote from Gary Schiffman, the CEO of Sun, who in ELS mirrors this as well in their report, talking about their priority. And he's talking here about the fourth quarter, but I think this can be generally applied to the annually. Focus on further simplification of our businesses to de-risk. And that's what both of these guys are just so laser focused like. And I think, as you said, why so much of this is turning to focus on how can we get, turn this volatile short-term campsite into something that's long-term, stable cash flow. It's something we can plan for.
Yep.
And as you said, if two things, it's de-risk and stability, and then it's getting rid of these non-core assets. We talked about this with the safe harbor sale last week. We talked about, the Canadian parks that are up for sale. So much of this is just about cut back where you can and just simplify as much as possible.
Right. Yeah. Well said. And it's interesting that ELS is sort of accomplishing the same thing, but through membership sales. So through their 1,000 Trails brand, they sell memberships, which is a super interesting thing to discuss in the industry because you're detaching the revenue from the site. It's like mixing a seasonal or annual site rental, with a timeshare. Like you only get so much access to the site. So they have like 26,000 membership sites, they call it. It's not really like a physical site, although I think they have sites that are dedicated to membership. So
And
two
we've seen,
different
good.
strategies.
There's kind of like Good Sam in Thousand Trails and kind of this membership camp. And as you said, ELS has accomplished something here that like there's not really a big Thousand Trails competitor. Like it's kind of it that exists.
It's been really hard for people to figure that out. We've seen them come up for sale like membership parks,
right?
But there's challenges there. Investors don't really understand how it works. Lenders don't really understand how it works. So you look at those as an investor, you're like, wow, that is a cash cow. And then you go talk to your lender and they're like, I can't touch that. And it's dead. So
right, but even those memberships were up about, I think it was close to like 20% over the last year for ELS on the Thousand Trails side, which, as you said, really sort of interesting, stable cash flow. It's really a cash machine for them in a lot of ways.
Yeah. We touched on glamping a little bit. I think we want to wrap up with a interesting story here.
Yeah, this talks about, again, we're kind of going through like a big players list today here between Spacious Skies, Sun Communities, ELS, and then, as you said, we'll kind of end things with Under Canvas here and their new location in Colorado.
Yes, so hopefully a new location in Colorado. They're Under Canvas. Just a little background. They're really seen as the pioneers of American glamping. Glamping has been a big thing in Europe and abroad for decades. It really took until like 2009 for it to really become like an actual industry in the US. Under Canvas had this brilliant strategy that I think a lot of people are modeling, whether you're campground, RV park, glamping, they're modeling the strategy. Get land that is super close to national parks, just awesome sites, irreplaceable land, always going to be a great location. And they put safari glamping tents on them. And so this will be their 15th location, I believe, if they're successful. They're getting pushback. And I think it's a lot of kind of NIMBYism of they're in remote locations. It's probably some people with some serious acreage. I think it was their location in Moab.
Right, back in 2021 that was contested. And, AutoCamp faced similarly, again, kind of on same vein, obviously different company, also back in 2021 with their location in Flagstaff. So kind of there's these areas, as you say, these communities sometimes just, and we've seen it again, even on the traditional campground side. KOA's Terramore Resort has faced problems. Northgate has, Blue Water has. Like this is not a unique challenge to Under Canvas per se. But as you said, it's not like Under Canvas has a really poor reputation or they're coming in running, we hear kind of the concern from communities sometimes that like, you don't want a trailer park showing up in your backyard. Obviously, Under Canvas is not that. There's ADRs are coming in at, it's kind of like $250 to kind of $800, $900, $1,000 a night. Like these are nice high-end properties, probably going to pay a lot in lodging taxes, probably going to bring a lot of tourism dollars to these areas. Jobs, exactly. I mean,
they're full service. They have food and beverage, restaurants.
Right, they're looking at buying a 350-acre parcel here in the Durango, Colorado area. Like this is not going to be a small operation. Right. They're very selective in their locations. Again, they've only got 15 of them. They're fantastic, but when they laser in on something, like they make it great. They're trying for that high end upscale side of the market in a big way. Yeah.
And I mean, it's an industry wide outdoor hospitality problem, but for different reasons. On the campground and RV park side, it's because people literally don't understand the difference between a mobile home park and an RV park. And you use the term trailer park. So people will line up out the door when an RV resort gets proposed and they're like, I don't want a trailer park. I don't want a mobile home park next to my house, whatever, in my town. Oh, they don't pay taxes. And they literally think they're talking about a mobile home park. Whereas on the high end glamping side, it's, well, I don't want, all these rich people coming into my town and like, the land.
Right. Why do we need the $1,000 a night rental?
Right.
We're we want this to be,
it's outsiders getting to,
it's cherry pick this great parcel, this best location just to use it for this exclusive group of clientele.
Right.
And yeah, it's an interesting thing. So they've got this planning and zoning public hearing coming up in a week on March the 13th. Going to be really interesting to see. As you said, it's kind of a delicate fine balance sometimes at those hearings to pitch the vision, kind of win the community, and obviously get the planning board on board with the proposal. So kind of going to be interesting to see what the public hearing looks like, how things go. Who knows? Maybe by in a couple of weeks we'll have an update kind of on this location and whether or not they're really going to be able to move forward with it.
They're no strangers to it. They've been through it.
Right. And they're again, it's a really great location. They're really close to, a great national park spot, kind of close to Flagstaff, Moab, Albuquerque. It's a really great location in a lot of ways, fairly close to their other Moab locations. So kind of an interesting selection in terms of picking this spot, and going to be interesting to kind of see how things turn out with this public hearing and whether or not the project moves forward.
100%.
Well, awesome, Matt. I think we did pretty good for another day. I think we're starting to get it right. I've got some great coffee helping me get through it. We've got our Well and Good Morning coffee brand that we got here. I was somebody who, lo and behold, was a listener and a fan of the show prior to us ever getting involved with the team here. Always saw and heard Will and the team kind of pitch the coffee. Never tried it before. I don't know about you. I love this stuff. It's fantastic.
I got it here too.
It's honestly amazing, and yeah, could not get through these episodes without coffee, especially when we go through kind of a data heavy day like we did today, going over some of these annual reports.
Yeah.
So really appreciate everybody for tuning in and give us another shot here in week 2. We're excited to keep this thing rolling and bring you some of the best outdoor hospitality news every Thursday morning on GMO. You can catch us live here on LinkedIn, YouTube. Your Twitter is going with us as well, if you're somebody who prefers to get it there on Twitter and X. And we'll see you back here next Thursday, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Hope everybody has a great week.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.